Today, the Department of Justice has dealt a major blow to cybercriminals looking to exploit cryptocurrency.
Bitfinex, 2016. They were hit with a hack.
$3.6 billion worth of cryptocurrency.
The largest single seizure of funds in the department's history.
The department has charged Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan.
They were arrested not for the theft, but for trying to launder the money.
For their alleged roles in a conspiracy to launder stolen cryptocurrency taken during the 2016 hack of a virtual currency exchange.
Before Ilya pleads guilty, they label that case a matter of national security.
They are not charging them, interestingly enough, with the hack.
The first hack that he did. He stole 120,000 Bitcoins.
Law enforcement officials briefing reporters just a few moments ago did not say who was responsible for stealing this $3.6 billion that they've recovered.
Eugene Lichtenstein was this bigwig that came over from Russia with his family claiming religious persecution. Eugene had connections with Russian intelligence.
We can and we will follow the money no matter what form it takes.
I do not believe at all that Ilya Lichtenstein did that. I also do not believe that the DOJ believes that. Ilya and his dad are going into witness protection. Huh? Ilya and his dad are going into witness protection. How? Why? This just does not sound right at all. So I'm the guy that broke the story about Eugene even being a hacker. I'm scary. Most wanted criminal. You guys know all that bullshit already, don't you? Yes, it's me, Brady, coming right back in again. Now, here's the thing. Today is a very special episode. Today, we are recording one episode for both Criminal Thoughts and The Brett Johnson Show. Well, what do you mean, Brett? Well, I mean, think of it as crossplay. That's what we're doing. Both the Marvel universe and the DC universe mixing together. You got your peanut butter in my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter. That's what we're doing. Why are we doing it like that? Well, a couple years ago, I recorded an episode about the Bitfinex theft and about Ilya Lichtenstein, the guy who tried to launder the money, about Heather Morgan, Razzle Khan, the fucking idiot woman who tried to be a rapper while they were laundering the money. Since that point, he's pled guilty. Some other things have happened in that case that I want to talk about today, just kind of do a refresher. We are absolutely going to be doing some flashbacks. Why? Well, because I don't want to rehash the exact same bullshit over and over and over again. If you guys have already seen that episode, you know what I'm talking about. If you've not seen it, Brian, because he is much, 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 much better at this bullshit than I am, see, there's the ding. He is going to, do the flashbacks for us, and we'll go like that. This episode, there's not going to be any art of accountability, any criminal insight, any bitch, moan, and complain, news headlines, anything else like that, because where this episode is cross-publishing to both of my shows, I didn't want to do that, and I also wanted this episode to focus on Ilya Lichtenstein, Bitfinex, Eugene Lichtenstein, his father. I've been thinking the past few days about how to go about this episode. And a lot of thoughts have been going through my head. Turns out that prison can be a very beneficial place. As a matter of fact, I joke a lot that prison, is a very fun environment because every Sunday you get to avoid anal rape. That's a joke. Somewhat, but look, it's prison is actually I learned a lot in prison, a lot of good takeaways. And one of the main things that I learned and came to appreciate post-prison incarceration is the understanding that the government is not there to help you. The government is there to help the government. And why I say that, in prison, you've got this environment where the inmates understand that. The inmates understand that the Department of Justice really doesn't give a damn about you. They understand that the guards there, that law enforcement, once law enforcement finishes with you, they don't really give a shit about you anymore, all right? Once the prison guards, they're there to do their time, make their money, and get the hell out. That's what they're interested in. So really, in a prison type of situation, you come to this understanding that it's not every man for himself, that it's the group that matters. And that's very important, because in today's society, we've got this belief that taking a political side matters. That, either the Democrats care more about you than the Republicans, or the Republicans care more about you than the Democrats. The truth of the matter is that neither one of those groups give a damn about you. They give a damn about themselves. Now, what the hell does that have to do with Ilya Lichtenstein? I'll get to that. I just wanted to bring that up and mention that, because it's not just the upper tier of government. Remember, we've got the judicial, the legislative, and the executive branches. All right, the judicial branch, they don't give a damn about you. We've got the Supreme Court up there right now. They're issuing judgments about the abortion pill, about whether Trump is immune, stuff like that. At the end of the day, they don't really care about you. You could ask Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas cares about the people who are paying for his trips to Bali. That's who he fucking cares about. Brett Kavanaugh cares about where he's going to get his next beer. I wish this country were a country not of individuals so much anymore, but of people trying to help themselves and doing the right damn thing. And I just wanted to mention that. I'm kind of laying the groundwork of what I want to talk about today. At the same time, it's important to understand that doing the right damn thing comes with consequences. It does. It comes with consequences. If you are that person who is insistent upon doing the right thing, regardless of who you're calling out, who you're pointing the finger at, whatever, you are going to suffer consequences. And I say that because, by God, I am that person. I was asked the other day, because I've been talking about some of this stuff on Twitter with Ilya, with Eugene, with the DOJ. I was asked the other day, well, Brett, what are you going to do if they try to paint you as crazy? And my response was, I honestly think they would have a pretty goddamn hard time doing that right now, seeing as where I am in my career. I've taught at Quantico. I've spoken with the biggest corporations on the planet. Hell, last year I helped get over 300 criminals arrested. To say that I have turned my life around, or am in the process of turning my life around, is an understatement. And I am widely, and I'm not trying to be conceited, I'm not trying to brag, but I'm widely respected in cybersecurity, cybercrime, and as a person who should not have been able to turn his life around. By all rights, I should be in prison. I should have gotten out. I should have just went right back into crime, starting some sort of dark web marketplace or whatever. Eventually got caught and would have wasted away in prison, but that didn't happen. I was very fortunate. I give credit where credit is due. The FBI helped me. My wife helped me. My sister helped me. I've got a deep respect of law enforcement these days. Not so much of the DOJ, but certainly of law enforcement. And I assist in law enforcement investigations. I help victims every day. I help corporations secure themselves. So I think it would be very difficult to paint me as that gentleman who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about and is just going off the rails. Even though if you've read my Twitter feed, I've been talking about a bunch of fucking politics lately. And I support Trump. That doesn't make me crazy. It just means that I like Trump a little more than I like Joe Biden. All right? That's the only thing it means. I don't like either one of them. I don't think that either one of them is going to benefit anyone in this country. I think they're going to benefit themselves and those people who give them money or that can benefit them. Okay, let's talk about things for a minute. So, John Giannone, an associate of mine, and I guess he's became a friend of mine over the past couple of years. John Giannone was a member of Shadowcrew, and when I got arrested, I set up John Giannone to be arrested. I gathered enough evidence against him. He got indicted, eventually served time. John is a good guy. He is. And the thing with John, understand, I am absolutely fucking guilty. I am. There's no doubt about it. All right. And I accepted my guilt. Now, that does not mean that I did not escape prison. Yes, I did escape prison because, yes, even though I know I'm guilty, I didn't want to fucking stay. So I released myself. All right. So, yes, I escaped prison. But when I got to prison, I didn't file an appeal. I didn't argue the time. Didn't do anything else. OK, I served my time. I was guilty. And today I still accept that guilt. Yes, by God, I did every single thing in that indictment plus more. Not bragging, just telling the truth. John Giannone is guilty as well. He did those things in that indictment. But at the same time, John has been the young man who has fought it every step of the way. And I think that if it were just John that we're talking about what we're talking about today, that it would be very easy to paint John as somewhat unhinged, as telling this story and banging this drum as a means to get a pardon or commutation or whatever that is. All right. I think it would be very easy to do that because he has consistently shown a desire to have his charges expunged, done away with, pardoned. I'm not like that. I'm not looking for a pardon. Matter of fact, these days I refer to myself as a criminal. I had a guy on Twitter just yesterday. You're not a criminal anymore. Don't call yourself a criminal. Yeah, I am. I am a criminal. I'm just not the criminal who commits crime anymore. I've still got that fucking mindset. I'm still a criminal. All right. I still have the same mindset. I still have the same types of temptations. I just choose not to commit crime anymore. John doesn't commit crime anymore either. All right. But John absolutely wants to erase that part of his past. And I think because of that desire to do that makes it very easy to paint him as potentially, as the guy asked me, crazy. All right. Bitfinex, 2016, they were hit with a hack. And in this hack, approximately 120,000 Bitcoins were stolen. As a matter of fact, I did a show on this, episode 46 of the Brett Johnson Show. We can, if you want to, we could do a little flashback right now. In or around August 2016, a hacker breached Bitfinex's security systems and infiltrated its infrastructure. While inside Bitfinex's network, the hacker was able to initiate over 2,000 unauthorized Bitcoin transactions in which approximately 119,000 Bitcoins was transferred from Bitfinex to an outside wallet. At the time of this breach, 119,000 coins was valued at approximately $71 million. Due to the increase of value in Bitcoin by February of 2022, it was valued at, those stolen coins were valued at $4.5 billion. U.S. authorities traced the stolen funds on the Bitcoin blockchain. As detailed below, beginning in or around 2017, a portion of the stolen Bitcoins moved out of Wallet 1C GA4S in a series of small, complex transactions across multiple accounts and platforms. This shuffling, which created a voluminous number of transactions, appeared to be designed to conceal the path of the stolen Bitcoins, making it difficult for law enforcement to trace the funds. Despite these efforts, as explained further below, U.S. authorities traced the stolen Bitcoin to multiple accounts controlled by Ilya Lichtenstein, a Russian U.S. national residing in New York, and his wife, Heather Morgan, a.k.a. Razzle Khan. What happened was 120,000 of these were stolen. They were stolen through a social engineering scheme, an attack. Now, those who have watched me understand that cybercrime works. It's successful primarily because of social engineering. Okay, if you are not a good social engineer, by God, you had better find yourself one, because in order to deploy that ransomware, in order to get someone to click on that phishing link, any number of things, you have to be a good social engineer. You have to convince that person to do that, because most products are fairly secure. It's the human that you look to compromise. So social engineering matters. The attack that hit Bitfinex was a social engineering scheme. It was a phishing attack. The guy got access. The attacker got access to the network. Used that as for a lateral move. Started getting passwords. Got API access. Then used that to start moving money or Bitcoin out of wallets. And then also at the same time obscured his tracks to where no one was able to track who did it. So yes, a social engineering attack, but understand a sophisticated social engineering attack, an attack that was launched by an attacker who knew what they were doing. And in the two shows that I recorded prior to this, I talk about this, okay? Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan, his wife, they were arrested not for the theft, but for trying to launder the money, okay? So what happens is Ilya, when the Bitcoin was stolen, it was approximately $70 million. When Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan are arrested at an apartment, New York City, that Bitcoin is about $6 billion, okay? So a huge move. The person who laundered the money, Ilya, if you read through the way that was laundered, and again, we can do a flashback here. Number 3, utilizing computer programs to automate transactions, a laundering technique which allows for many transactions to take place in a short period of time. That's right. You don't want to do this shit manually if you can avoid it, because you've got 119,000 tokens. There's no way it would take you forever to try to launder that many tokens out. Number 4, layering the stolen funds by depositing them into accounts at a variety of cryptocurrency exchanges and darknet markets, and then withdrawing the funds, which obfuscates the trail of the transaction history by breaking up the fund flow. Again, very legitimate. Number 5, converting the Bitcoin into other forms of virtual currency, typically Monero, in a practice known as chain hopping. And number 6, using US-based business accounts to legitimize the activity. That was how that was done. Okay. Now, what was interesting in that is that if you look at the way the money was laundered, it is not an indication that the person who tried to launder it, in this case, Ilya and Heather Morgan, that they knew what they were doing. It's like they read a bunch of tutorials and learned that way. So I had this theory on those previous two shows, and my theory was, you look at Ilya Lichtenstein's operational security. So OPSEC is what the bad guys call it. I think that's what the good guys call it too. OPSEC is what you have to do as an attacker to remain anonymous, to make sure that you are not tracked, okay? So if you look at the way that he learned OPSEC, or the way that OPSEC was done during that attack and then during the subsequent money laundering, and if you look at the way the money laundering was done, it screams someone that had absolutely no practical experience at all in doing those things. It screams someone who simply read about it online and then tried to do it. That was my theory. Okay. Now here's what happens. Those Bitcoin are stolen. Those Bitcoins sit there for a solid year, no movement whatsoever. And then we start to see some of those coins coming out and being laundered at that point in time. The way the laundering done was like a fucking idiot. ultimately Ilya cashed out some of those Bitcoin through his personal Coinbase account, using his real name, his real driver's license, everything else. So it's very easy at that point to start tracking this individual. As a matter of fact, it was so goddamn bad that authorities couldn't believe that he was the real guy that did it. Because, hey, no fucking idiot would ever do something like that. Rule number 1 in cybercrime is all crime should begin with identity theft. Why commit a crime under my name if I can do it under your name? Well, he didn't do that. He did it under his name. So he was very inexperienced. So I had that theory. The other theory that I had, looking at the attack itself, Ilya Lichtenstein pled guilty to money laundering. Not only did he plead guilty to money laundering, but he also said that he was the person that stole the money from Bitfinex. In his account of that, and I've got the indictment, and I've got some notes here that we can walk through as well. In that, there's a few things that I find very interesting, and it begins on page 5 of his testimony, not his indictment, but of his testimony against Roman Sterlingov. So Roman Sterlingov was the guy who ran Bitcoin Fog, and Bitcoin Fog is a Bitcoin money launderer. Let's backtrack. All right, if you are stealing Bitcoin, or you're committing some sort of criminal act and getting paid in Bitcoin, or you've got some sort of illegal Bitcoin, Bitcoin that you've got is related to criminal activity, you cannot send that bullshit over to Coinbase and cash it out, because Coinbase tracks that wallet and they see every transaction on that wallet with that Bitcoin, and they're able to determine, oh, this Bitcoin specifically right here came from the Mt. Gox theft, or it came from these phishing schemes, or it came from this ransomware attack. So they're able to see that, and they immediately lock down that fucking account. So you have to wash the Bitcoin. You have to make that Bitcoin look clean. And in order to do that, there were several different type of washers out there. Bitcoin Fog was one of them. All right. There's been several over the years, and a lot of those people who ran those, who created them, have been indicted and given a lot of time. Roman Sterlingov was a Swedish Russian, who started Bitcoin Fog and laundered 1.2 million Bitcoins. And the way it works is, think of it as a big bag. All right. So you're wanting to make your Bitcoin clean. So you send your Bitcoin, they put it in that bag with everyone else's Bitcoin. They shake the shit out of it, mix it all up, and then they distribute your Bitcoin back. So your Bitcoin is mixed with everyone else's Bitcoin, and it becomes obfuscated as to where those coins came from. It becomes very difficult to start trying to track them down. You can do it, but it becomes very difficult to do that. Turns out that shit's illegal. That's money laundering. So what happens is Ilya pleads guilty to Bitfinex. He also says, I was the guy who stole the coins, and he agrees to be a government witness so that he can get some time off. Now, how much time was he looking at? Well, the statute says up to 20 years. His PSR, pre-sentence report. So what happens is when you go through the legal system and federal authorities, before you are sentenced, the probation office and the prosecutor's office, they sit down and they do this in-depth background check. It recommends to the judge how much time you should get for those charges. In Ilya's case, they're recommending 10 to 12 years. In Heather Morgan's case, 5 to 10. 5 is what she's going to get. But most of that will be on home confinement, some bullshit like that. All right, so that's where we're standing there. Now Ilya also agreed to testify against anybody they wanted him to testify against. So they bring him in to testify against Roman Sterlingov, who was indicted. He's getting sentenced, I think, August of this year. He's going to get a shit ton of time. He's going to get probably 25, 30 years is what he's going to get, because he's Russian. Nobody gives a shit about him, and people are really trying to send a message on all these crypto scams that are going around. So he's going to get a boatload of time. In Ilya's testimony against Sterlingov, the prosecutor, I want to take you back to the early 2010s or so. What were you doing at that time? Ilya responds, I was an entrepreneur. I started a tech company. So you started a tech company. Did you have any tech background? Yeah, I taught myself to code and IT and things like that. So he says, were you a computer science major in college? No, I studied psychology in college. Now, here's the thing. He went to Northwestern. Yeah. So he was all right. He didn't have to choose to go into crime. It wasn't like he was disenfranchised or poor or in some ethnic neighborhood where the only fucking way to get out was committing crime. No, he wasn't. His dad, Eugene Lichtenstein, was this bigwig that came over from Russia with his family claiming religious persecution. That is code for, well, he's FSB. For those who don't know, FSB is what the KGB moved over to when the wall fell. So yeah, he absolutely has connections with FSB. So Eugene comes over. Eugene becomes a mortgage broker for real estate and makes a shit ton of money. He does very well. Ilya goes to Northwestern for psychology. So we'll continue here. Question. During that time that you started the tech company, did you meet Miss Morgan, his future wife, who you testified about yesterday? Yes. At some point while you were working at this tech company, did you become aware of cryptocurrency? And he goes through that. Yes, I did. That's where I first learned of cryptocurrency was in the 2010s. Okay. Page 6, did you purchase some? Yeah. And he says, did you use any type of drugs? And he says, well, I went to darknet markets and several times for personal use. I purchased psychedelic drugs, so primarily mushrooms and LSD. Now, for those who have watched my show, you know that Brady is not a druggie. I'm not. All right. My mom was addicted to Valium. My mom, bipolar, narcissistic, very abusive. So she was addicted to Valium. She also liked a slew of different types of drugs. So growing up, I absolutely refused. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke pot. I didn't do anything like that. I didn't want to be like my mom. Now I say that because, hell, I'm 54 now. And I have now tried DMT, which I gotta tell you, I like that shit a lot. There was a guy on Reddit yesterday that asked if everyone who went through a DMT experience believed in God afterwards. I will say that I hate to say yes, but I will say, yeah, I think so. Okay. So when it's hitting, it's great. But at the same time, DMT, depending on what's going on in your environment, DMT can come with this thing called the death of ego. And let me tell you in no uncertain terms, when that shit happens, it's like, holy fuck, man. I mean, I'm just this worthless piece of shit. All the ego dies. And that's a very eye-opening experience when you're able to see yourself very plainly. So I have tried that. I've tried ecstasy. I like that a lot. Other than that, I mean, there's been in my entire life, I've tried THC, either in gummy form or smoke form. Have never liked it at all. So that's my entire thing. I don't drink. I'm not a regular DMT user. I gave that shit up because I was using the vape pen. And I had never vaped anything. I got to tell you guys, that shit fucking sucks. That shit gets in your lungs. You're coughing up shit for days afterwards. It's just a horrible experience. I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I gave that up. I do enjoy a bottle of champagne about once a month. And I'm the only one in the house that drinks. So I down a bottle and I'm like, yeah, I'll put on like Mad Max or something like that. And go, yeah. Or The Thing, John Carpenter. I do shit like that. All right. So Ilya liked his psychedelics. I've not used mushrooms, not used LSD, anything like that. So he liked to buy psychedelic drugs from the dark web. Prosecutor, how were you able to get onto these markets? What browser did you use? I used a Tor browser. And then the prosecutor branches off into something else. How was your business doing 2013, 2014? There was an objection to that. He says, at some point, did you decide you wanted to hack something? Ilya responds, yes. Prosecutor, can you briefly explain what it means to hack something? Ilya responds, to gain unauthorized access to a computer system and to obtain data from it. If you have been in cybersecurity, law enforcement, on the cybersecurity angle of law enforcement for any length of time, that answer should raise a flag. It should scream to you, well, he's been coached or he's read that online, because yeah, that is a textbook definition of hack, but that's not really the end definition. You want to go on to explain that. And that's one of the things that happens during this testimony with Ilya. is he will say something like he's been coached to say it, like he's read it online, but he's not able to really dive in and explain what that actually means. And I want to go through some of this testimony to illustrate what I'm talking about. Question, do you know what Bitfinex is? Well, he should. He just pled guilty a few months prior to this testimony. He says, yes, it is a cryptocurrency exchange. Did you decide to hack Bitfinex? Answer, yes, I did. Question, why? Ilya, I mean, at the time, I think my business was struggling and I was feeling very burned out from it. And I felt very selfish. I felt like I didn't really care about anyone else. I just wanted to get mine. I wanted to access the cryptocurrency on it. I wanted to make some money. A lot of people that listen to my show, a lot of people who have read the news of Ilya or the FTX guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, if you've not been through the court system before, an answer like this might come off as very truthful. It's not. This answer is exactly what you're supposed to say to accept responsibility in front of the judge. See, when you plead guilty in the federal system, the acceptance, it's called acceptance of responsibility. You make that statement, and then you get 3 points off of your sentencing. So what happens in federal sentencing, it's not like the judge just looks at you and says, I don't like this son of a bitch. I'm going to give him 30 fucking years. You're going to rot behind bars, you piece of filth. It's not like that. What happens is they look at the charge, and then they look at the number of past criminal charges that you've got, the dollar amount and the victim, and they cross everything over, and it comes up with a number, a range. You know, he's supposed to serve 108 to 120 months is the range, all right? So you get so many points on that. If you accept responsibility, they take 3 points off, so you get less time at the end of the day. This answer that he gave is exactly, you can go through any number of plea hearings, and this is almost word for word what criminals say in front of a judge. And where do they get that? Their fucking lawyer tells them this is what you're supposed to say. Don't say anything fucking else. Say that. If you say anything fucking else, you're not going to get your fucking time off. Do you understand? And then you're going to have to spend your Sundays avoiding anal rape. So they put the fear of God into you, and you tend to say that. So that's what Ilya says. Were you able to eventually access cryptocurrency on Bitfinex that did not belong to you? Ilya, yes. Question, how were you able to do that? Ilya, it was over a period of a few months. I was able to access one server that Bitfinex used, and then used that to gain access to other servers and to credentials that would allow me to transfer cryptocurrency out of that exchange. What the fuck does that mean? Because that's what he says. All right, that's what he says, and we're going to go through some more of that in a second. But I want you to bear this in mind. Ilya decides in 2016 or late 2015, he decides that he wants to be a hacker. The first hack that he did was Bitfinex. The first hack that he did. He stole 120,000 Bitcoins. And he says the way that he did it is it was over a period of a few months. I was able to access one server that Bitfinex used and then use that to gain access to other servers and to credentials that would allow me to transfer cryptocurrency out of that exchange. You're not really saying much. You're talking a lot, but I got this saying where I say, hey, you're like the whitest guy on earth who says all this shit but doesn't really say anything. That's what Ilya's doing right now. Prosecutor, at some point, did you gain access to other customers of Bitfinex, their wallets, etc. on Bitfinex? Answer, I gained access to a lot of wallets on Bitfinex, yes. Question, and then what did you do once you got into those wallets? Answer, I created a script to automatically transfer the funds for those wallets into my wallets that I controlled. Question, how long were you on Bitfinex on the inside able to do that? Answer, throughout kind of the whole process, I had access to their systems for several months, but I didn't have access to the credentials for their cryptocurrency for that whole time. Question, so for how long were you able to have access to those credentials. Ilya says, well, once I started transferring it, I let it run, and it was throughout maybe a few hours. Prosecutor asks, were you able to later access Bitfinex customer resources at other exchanges as a result of the hack? And Ilya says, yes. So what the prosecutors ask there, so you were able to get the passwords and then use the passwords from Bitfinex to try to log in to other cryptocurrency exchanges, use the credentials that were stolen from Bitfinex to log into other cryptocurrency exchanges and steal the Bitcoin from there. And Ilya says, yes. So this is an example of credential stuffing. And credential stuffing works because 80%, 80 fucking idiot percent of the entire world population uses the same or similar login credentials across multiple networks, across multiple websites. So that's why credential stuffing is so successful. To this day, it's that successful. Question from prosecutor. Were you able to recover money from there as well? Ilya, from some of them, yes. Prosecutor, and the form of the cryptocurrency, it was all Bitcoin. Yes. How much Bitcoin were you able to recover as a result of the hack? Ilya, about 120,000 Bitcoin. You know, if it were me, I'd smile. I'd give this big shit-eating possum grin all of a sudden. I don't know what he did, but that's what I would do because, hell, I've already pled guilty. It's not like they're going to fucking do anything to me as I'm testifying against this guy. How much Bitcoin? 120,000. Prosecutor, did you have a sense of how much this 120,000 Bitcoin was worth in August of 2016? Ilya says, yeah, about $70 million. And just to be complete, did you also hack some money from an exchange called Paycoin? Ilya says, yes, at an earlier time for a small amount of money. Do you know what operational security is? Yes, operational security. Now, here's what's becoming interesting. Remember my theory that Ilya laundering the money and his operational security for laundering the money, it was like he had read a shitload of tutorials online and had never really done any of it. That was my theory almost 2 fucking years ago. That was my theory because it turns out Brett Johnson knows what the fuck he's talking about when he looks at this shit. I am not the only person that knows what I'm talking about. The DOJ knows what's going on here too. Make no mistake about that. They know exactly what's going on. And I want you to bear this in mind that Ilya, with these answers, the DOJ, if they were to look any farther past just the superficial on this, they would be able to see that, this shit just does not sound right at all. He asked him, do you know what operational security is? Yes, or OPSEC is. Ilya says, yes, operational security. And in the context of hacking, what does operational security mean? And there's an objection, it's overruled. And then Ilya responds, basically, it is protecting yourself from being discovered. So it could mean protecting your identity, protecting your IP address, which identifies the computer from being traced, basically trying to evade whenever you are tracking or whenever you are hacking or law enforcement from tracking you down. That's his answer. That's a correct answer. Again, it's the answer that someone who is inexperienced with operational security, it's how they would answer that, because operational security goes much, much deeper than that. It's the proxies that you're using. It's the mindset that you have. It's testing everything to make sure that you're not being identified. It's running tests beforehand. It's doing all this stuff in the buildup to the final attack, because you have to make sure that all your fucking ducks are in a row, because you don't want the FBI or the Secret Service to come and get your ass and give you 20 years behind bars. And that's exactly what they'll do if your operational security fails. So Ilya gives, again, a textbook or a coached answer when asked what operational security is. Question from the prosecutor. How did you learn to use operational security in your specific case? And of course, there's an objection, but it's overruled again. And Ilya says, just reading. Just reading. So there is a lot of online resources. There's a lot of discussion forums where people discuss particular methods of operational security. Just reading. So I have been very fortunate now that I'm on the legal side of things that I get to talk to security companies. I get to talk to law enforcement. I get to talk to students that are going through cybersecurity programs or justice programs. One of the things that's very interesting, that's very apparent from someone like me that comes from that criminal background and has now transitioned over to the legal side of things, one of the things that's very interesting to me is that gap between those who read about things and those who do things, because it's a huge gap. You can read about how to do these things all day long, but until you actually start to do it, you have no clue what the fuck is really going on. It's like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the fucking nose. And then the plan goes out the window. So typically what you do is you will read a tutorial, all right? Even today, I read tutorials, okay? And I'll read white papers and things like that. And I find many of those tutorials very beneficial, not from a stance of, well, I didn't know how to do that shit, but from a stance of telling me where things are going. There's a huge difference between reading about it and then how things actually work. If you're just reading about how to launder money or how to hack into a system or how to do proper operational security, the chances of you failing are close to 100%. You may be that lucky fucking idiot that's able to get through with it. You may be that guy. But more often than not, you are going to fail. So Ilya learns his operational security just reading. That's the only thing he does. Are you familiar with something called exploit? You mean a website called exploit? Yes. It is a cybercrime forum. Was that something that you occasionally looked at? Yes, at times. Was that for the purpose of learning about operational security? Primarily, it was to find vendors who sold services that might be connected to that. For example, selling access to proxy servers that could conceal my location. Prosecutor asks, well, what's a proxy server? Ilya says, so a proxy server is essentially a way to conceal someone's IP address. So the way that I kind of think about it is if I'm sending a letter in an envelope that has a return address and my proxy server essentially takes that letter out of the envelope, puts it in another envelope that has another return address, kind of like a remailing service, but online. So it is a way to not have my IP address be recorded or tracked. Every answer that Ilya Lichtenstein gives comes off as a very coached answer, or it's an answer that's an extremely superficial answer that does not explain at all how these things actually work. It's somebody who's read about it, who hasn't done it at all. Prosecutor, in running this hack, did you use devices that were inside of your house? Ilya, yes. Did you use servers that were outside of your house? Yes, I did. Are you familiar with DigitalOcean? And he says, yes, they're hosting companies. Did you use those as part of your hack? And he says, I used those as part of the laundering. I don't remember if I used it as part of the hack. So you have $70 million in Bitcoin. Do you go and cash that out? And Ilya responds, well, not right away. It will be very difficult to do so. Prosecutor, well, why would it be difficult? And Ilya responds, well, because obviously that would raise some red flags. Just as if I say I went to a bank with $70 million in cash, that would raise red flags. Prosecutor, did you have a concern about what the Bitcoin you took would look like toward banks? And Ilya says, yes, absolutely. Do you know what blockchain analysis is? And he says, yes. So for those who don't know, you've got the blockchain. The blockchain is a distributed ledger, all right? So, and in Bitcoin's case, that blockchain is public. So every single transaction you can see on the blockchain publicly. You can look it up, all right? And you can see where the money's coming from, where it's going, and you can follow that bullshit all the way out to where it finally ends up. And to be clear, cryptocurrency always ends up being transferred or translated over to fiat currency, in this case, US dollars, okay? Always. Because you got to be able to buy shit after a while, okay? So Chain analysis. There's a company called Chain Analysis that does Bitcoin transactions. That's blockchain analysis, and they look at all of these transactions. They trace them down and they try to figure out where the money's going, and then identify the person from there. That's what happened in Ilya Lichtenstein's case. A company called Chain Analysis comes in and they're able to track down every single Bitcoin transaction until they get to the point where they're able to find that Ilya, fucking idiot that he was, decided to send and cash out some of the money from his real personal Coinbase fucking account. Fucking short bus idiot is what we call that. They ask him, do you know what it is? And he's like, yeah, I know what it is. Page 12, line 7. So did you have concerns about how your Bitcoin might be seen on the blockchain? Answer, yes. So all transactions on the blockchain are public. And this is Ilya talking. Anyone can see them. And so, of course, I would have concerns about that. So when Bitcoin comes out, criminals, because you have to have a way to pay for those stolen credit cards. You have to have a way to pay for those proxy services or those illegal hosting services. You have to have a way to pay somebody for that fucking LSD and mushrooms or DMT that you're ordering. Back then, the only cryptocurrency that was around was Bitcoin. Back then, criminals didn't really understand what a public blockchain was, and they said, well, you know, we're secure, we're anonymous. You're not anonymous. All that bullshit is public. These days, you've got other types of blockchains, other types of crypto that's much more secure and private and anonymous, primarily Monero. So you'll see on darknet marketplaces today that most marketplaces that know what the fuck they're doing, most marketplaces, you're going to use Monero, period. Don't give a fuck about anything. So you're going to use Monero. So those criminals who accept Monero, they then will convert that Monero over to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the blue chip of all cryptocurrency. There's a reason it's at $70,000 fucking dollars today. There's a reason that Robert Kiyosaki, the rich man, poor man guy, I've been on his show, by the way. There's a reason that he's saying that Bitcoin's going to hit 350K a pop by August of this year. And it might. It absolutely might. I don't see it going down and bottoming out to zero anytime fucking soon. But back then, criminals thought that it was anonymous. It wasn't, all right? Ilya talks about how these things are tracked. So he says, you know, yes, all transactions on the blockchain are public. Prosecutor, do you know what blockchain tracing is? And they talk about what I've just told you about how you trace these things down on a public ledger. Anyone can look at every single transaction that takes place. All right. So what, if any, concern did you have about blockchain tracing? Ilya says, so basically that when I sold or cashed out that Bitcoin in some way, that law enforcement would use blockchain tracing to connect the Bitcoin that I sold to the stolen Bitcoin from the hack. Were there any particular companies you were concerned with? And Ilya mentions Chainalysis. Now, I've got to be honest with you. Ilya Lichtenstein more than likely had no fucking clue who Chainalysis was when he was trying to launder that fucking money. He became very aware of Chainalysis once he gets his fucking ass arrested and all that discovery comes and you've got these fucking folders from Chainalysis saying, Ilya, 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 fucking idiot, Ilya, 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 fucking moron, Ilya. All right? He becomes very familiar of that at that point in time. But before that, I'm going to bet that he had no clue what Chainalysis or what Bitcoin tracing was at all. The way that he tried to launder money, again, we can do a flashback on that. The way that he tried to launder money screams that he had no clue how this stuff was tracked at all. So they set up accounts at crypto exchanges in stolen identities in other people's names, okay? Cryptocurrency exchange number one was unable to verify the identities of any of the listed account holders. Specifically, in February and March of 2017, the cryptocurrency exchange employees requested that the registered account holders for 7 of the accounts provide additional identifying information to verify their account ownership. Cryptocurrency exchange did not receive a response to these requests. As a result, the currency exchange froze the accounts. In total, $186,000 was the value of those accounts that they froze. So Lichtenstein and Morgan, you set up accounts. If you're going to launder money, you set up accounts in different people's names. But for some reason, they didn't know anything about KYC, know your customer. For you to set up an account, That bank, that financial institution, that cryptocurrency exchange, that fintech, whatever the hell that is, they have KYC. It's the law. They have to verify that the person setting up the account is the person setting up the account. Now, that's not rocket science for a criminal to be able to trick that and manipulate that. You get someone stolen PII. You may have to make up a fake driver's license or get someone to take a selfie. There's services that do that for you that charge like $50 to do that. Or you can do it yourself. It's not expensive. It's not hard to do that. But they set up these accounts, started funneling money through there, and hadn't really prepared at all on how to settle or solve KYC. Instead, they got the notification, we need copies of ID, copies of address. We need maybe a selfie with that ID in hand, or photocopies or, snapshots of the driver's licenses. They weren't prepared for that, so they abandoned the accounts. The accounts were then frozen. Later on, when they conduct a search warrant against Lichtenstein and Morgan, Lichtenstein's got a damn spreadsheet with those accounts listed saying frozen beside them. So it all linked to him. Idiot had the smoking gun paper. He tried to send some through Alphabay. So 2017, Alphabay shut down July 5, 2017, largest criminal network on the planet. Ilya and Heather Morgan had tried to send, because the way the Alphabay marketplace operated, you would send Bitcoins in to fund your criminal account, and it would kind of wash those tokens in. So you would send the tokens in to a virtual account that was holding those tokens for you, so you could buy drugs or credit cards or guns or whatever you were buying. And then when you sent them back out, that chain was broken. It was sent to a different address. Everything else to a degree, it helped launder or wash the tokens. The problem is that Alphabay gets busted in 2017, July 5th, 2017. The owner of that promptly hangs himself, but federal authorities got the Alphabay database. So they were able to look at and see, okay, some of the Bitfinex coins went in here. Because they had the database, they were then able to see where those specific tokens then shot out of, and able to track it from that point. And it turns out they were tracked to accounts at virtual currency exchanges that were set up in the name of Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan. Again, a rookie mistake. You never set up the accounts in your names. You don't want that, because you anticipate that at some point that database may be compromised. So first crime, all theft, all crime should begin with identity theft. That's one of the cornerstone rules. He didn't do that either. They also set up businesses in their names and had the Bitcoins deposited to those businesses. So every single mistake that you could possibly imagine is exactly what Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan do. Question. This is line 25 on page 11. Where was the Bitcoin? Where was it stored after you got it? Answer. So the private key, the Bitcoin is on the blockchain, but the private keys or the access credentials to it were stored on my computer in encrypted form. Question. This is line 5 on page 13 of the testimony against Roman Sterlingov. So you mentioned money laundering, and you testified yesterday that you pled guilty to money laundering. I take it you did some laundering with respect to the $70 million worth of Bitcoin. Answer, yes. So I used a variety of different services and techniques to try to obfuscate or conceal where it came from. This is what becomes extremely important. Question. How did you learn about those different techniques? That is line 11 on page 13. Answer, just like the same thing. A lot of research online, looking at different forums, looking at just different services that are available, such as exchanges and things like that. So he learned his operational security, and he learned how to launder money by reading. Not only did he learn those things by reading, but he claims that he learned how to hack through reading, simply reading, not doing it. And the first real hack that he did, sure, he did a test with Paycard or Paycoin, but the first real hack that he did, that he learned just by reading, was Bitfinex, and was able to steal 120,000 Bitcoin. Not only that, but simply by reading, simply by being a novice hacker, he was able to and this is what John sent me, and he says it's so much better than I do. He was able to compromise a vulnerable server on the Bitfinex network, then escalate privileges laterally around the network, and then alter the code on their platform to change their user passwords from hash to plain text, and then delete all of the evidence, all of that trail of breadcrumbs that every fucking attacker leaves. He was able to delete those, leave the environment in such a way that he was not able to be identified whatsoever. First attack, simply by reading. Those who have no experience in cybercrime or in committing crime at all, I don't think that you really appreciate how impossible that is. All right, especially if you look at someone like Ilya Lichtenstein and Heather Morgan. To say that they are fucking idiots is putting it lightly. Okay? They are fucking idiots. In my previous shows, I walked through the Bitfinex attack, the way it was performed, because at that point in time, Ilya had not told the court that he had also stolen the Bitcoin. The question became, who stole the Bitcoin from Bitfinex? I do not believe at all that Ilya Lichtenstein did that. I also do not believe that the DOJ believes that. I don't believe that the FBI believes that either. Here's why. I was arrested February 8th of 2005. I was arrested by the FBI and the Charleston, South Carolina Police Department, local PD there. Within 45 minutes of Secret Service, they come in, they take over the case. I was then offered a deal. Hey, what can you do for us? And my answer was, I can do whatever the fuck you want me to do as long as I can get back with my fiance. They let me sit there for 3 months before they get me out, and I go to work for the Secret Service. That investigation was initially supposed to last for 3 months. It lasted for almost a year before I go on the run and make the United States Most Wanted list, go to prison, escape prison, all that other bullshit. But that investigation lasted for almost a year. There was a lot of improprieties that took place during that investigation. We had agents. The way the investigation worked, what happened was I was in Charleston, South Carolina. The Secret Service field office is in Columbia, South Carolina. So I move from Charleston to Columbia, South Carolina so I can work with the Secret Service. My job was 4 to 6 hours a day. I would go in to the Secret Service office and to their war room, which was, about 30 feet by 12 feet. I would go in there. They had me on a laptop hooked up to an outside internet line. That laptop was also hooked up to a 50-inch plasma monitor mounted on the wall, so they could view everything that was going on. At the same time, that laptop had Camtasia and SpectraPro. So Camtasia would capture a screenshot every 15 seconds. SpectraPro was a keylogger, so they were able to track everything that was going on that laptop. At the end of every night, all of that information was burned to a DVD, was put on a spindle at the end of the night. At the same time, in that room, there were always 2 Secret Service officers and a South Carolina law enforcement official in the room at all times. Now, sometimes the SLED person would not show up, but there was always Secret Service there, all right? They had a desktop computer that was literally next to my laptop, and their desktop was hooked up to an outside line as well. I talked about some of the improprieties, some of the things that happened during that investigation. The first few weeks, they were very diligent. They asked questions. They paid attention to every fucking thing that I was doing. The problem is that when I am online, I'm scary, to say the least. I'll have 30 windows open, and the speed at which I'm navigating those windows and having conversations and talking to multiple people, that multitasking is very intimidating, and it's very hard to follow through with that. The first couple, 3 weeks, Secret Service and SLED, they were like, shit, man, what's going on? Slow down. What's going on? Walk us through this. Bam, bam, bam. The thing is after you see that shit for a couple weeks, your ass becomes bored. They became bored. So what did these fucking idiots do? They started to watch porn. while I am doing my shit online. And the site, they love this site called Flash Your Rack. And Flash Your Rack. And I don't even know if it's still up anymore, but you would have these amateurs that would take snapshots of their tits, and you would rank their tits from a scale of 1 to 10. And then you go to the next one. And you could do that all night long. And that's what they did for 4 to 6 hours, is they would, oh, look at this set right here. I still remember they brought down a CD to me and handed to me, and the CD said confidential files on there. So here I am. I put it in. I was like, oh, what is this? I'm allowed to see some confidential stuff. And it was a fucking Tara Patrick XXX film. Gotta say, she's pretty, but not exactly what you should be watching in a government office while an investigation is going on. That's what these agents were doing. So, you know, if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me talk about how I continued to break the law from inside Secret Service offices. And I absolutely did. And that allowed me to do that. Hell, if they're not going to pay attention to me, and at the same time, I understand that all of that information is going on a set of DVDs on a spindle, not cataloged at all. No one's going to go through that bullshit. In fact, the people who were indicted on the investigation for discovery, they gave them a fucking spindle with all the DVDs on it and said, hey, go do it. So most people pled guilty. All right, so that was one thing. Another thing they did was there was a Canadian investigation that the RCMP was running. They got this kid out of jail to open up a site called La Cosa Nostra, and I was told to shut that shit down. And believe you me, I fucking did. All right, because one of the things that you see, and it's still happening today, is that government agencies, it can be the FBI, CIA, DNS, Secret Service, those government agencies, they absolutely do not share information with each other. Understand that. We tend to think that all these agencies communicate. No, the CIA does not hand over any exploits that they may have with Telegram to law enforcement. That does not fucking happen, because those exploits are valuable to the CIA. If they give them to the FBI or the Secret Service, well, you guys are going to fuck it up. And to be honest with you, they probably would. So they don't. But at the same time, you've got this fight for budgets. That's really the problem, because now you've got the FBI and the Secret Service. Both of them are wanting to concentrate on cybercrime. Both of them, to do that, they need budgets. To get the budget, they have to indict a bunch of people, so they don't share the information of investigations cross-agency. They keep that shit to themselves. Same thing with foreign agencies. In this case, the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And no, at the time I thought, well, shit, all those guys are on horseback. They had the investigation, and I was told to shut it down, and I did. And within a couple of days, Washington's calling them and saying, hey, what's your fucking idiot Brett Johnson doing right now? So they came down and had a talk with me. That was just some of the improprieties. So 3 months into my tenure at the Secret Service field office, and yes, by this point, I am absolutely committing crime on that laptop, all right? So 3 months into that, I walk into the office. I had a burner phone at that point. I wasn't allowed to take it back home with me. I had to stay at the Secret Service field office. I walk in, I sit down, I log into, at that point in time, it was Scandinavian Carding. There were a few sites, a few criminal forums that were up. Scandinavian Carding was up. Mazafaka was up. The International Association for the Advancement of Criminal Activity was still alive. There were several sites that were still alive. So I log into these sites. As soon as I log in, my burner phone starts to ring. That's odd. No one should have that fucking number. The person that's communicating with me on the other end, they're using TTL. So TTL is what phone companies use if someone has hearing loss or something like that in order to communicate with you. So the person is using TTL on the other end of the line and proceeds to tell me that they have compromised my system, and they start shooting. They didn't have my name, but they had my fiance's name, and they start shooting a lot of her personal information along with the address that we're living to me. Remember, there's 2 Secret Service agents in the room with me, and they're seeing this stuff. Now, they think that it's me, that I've arranged this bullshit to try to get out of the investigation. So they look at me, let's go check out your fucking apartment, Brett. We go search the apartment. My fiance is there. They figure out pretty quickly, well, no, that's not. It's not Brett. It's some outside guy who somehow has compromised something. And I tell them, I tell them at this point in time, hey, I really think that this machine has a keylogger on it, and we need to format immediately. And they tell me, nah, it's fine. We don't format for 3 months. During that 3-month time, this attacker takes over an eGold account, takes over email accounts, and monitors every single thing that I'm typing because there's a keylogger on there. Okay, so he gets all the credentials, all that, and starts trying to mine out information. He's publishing a lot of this information as well. He never finds out my real name, and I don't find out his real name. Now, the Secret Service people, they do find out his real name. He's coming from Illinois, and we find an IP address from Northwestern is the way we track him. And the way we tracked him, back then what criminals used to communicate, we didn't have Signal back then or WhatsApp or Telegram or anything else like that. We had ICQ, okay? So if you were using an earlier version of ICQ to message people, it would show the IP address of the person that you were messaging, okay? So what this guy was doing, he was using proxy addresses, but he wasn't using proxies immediately. He would communicate with you, and then finally he would switch over to a proxy address. So we were able to get his real IP address. The two Secret Service agents, Bobby Kirby and Brad Smith. Now, just to let you know about these improprieties, Bobby Kirby, who I respect the man, I like the man. I had lunch with him a few years ago, and I was able to apologize for all of my wrongdoing with the guy. And he's the guy that told me, I told him I was trying to be a better guy. And he was the guy that told me that I had always been a good guy. I just didn't know it. So that even today, that shit gets me choked up. I have a respect for that man. But that man lost his fucking job at the Secret Service because he fucked up. All right? Because of that porn stuff, because he didn't run the investigation right. At the same time, the other agent, the first agent in charge was Brad Smith. Brad Smith got fucking dismissed because of the way he was fucking up. He got put in second place, and then Bobby Kirby became the main agent in charge about halfway through the investigation. Brad Smith remained at the Secret Service. Today he is not at the Secret Service. He is working for Patriots Group International, which is a CIA front-run agency. And they do some mercenary work, shit like that. Yeah, it turns out I know a little bit. They tracked down who the attacker is in Illinois. Brad and Bobby fly up there to talk to this guy. And they talk to him. And this guy, and during my previous show, episode 46, I actually show the documents. This guy admits to it. Not only does he admit to that, so when we were talking to him, because I was pissed. I was absolutely pissed. That breach, him putting the keylogger on the system and publishing all that information is a lot of what led to the and to be fair, that relationship that I had with my fiancée Elizabeth, that was not going to work out. It was not. We were both very toxic for each other. Yeah, there was love there, but we were both very toxic. We both were very dishonest with each other, and we both absolutely did not need to be with each other. So it was, and I had lied to her about my past. So that's a recipe for disaster. That was going to end. But what helped speed that up was this guy breaking in and hacking into that government laptop. So he automatically was in trouble for that because, believe it or not, it's illegal to hack into a government machine, whether you know you're doing that or not. And he did not know it. That's the number one felony against him. And I was trying to build up more criminal charges against him. Well, it turned out that he had hacked into a bank in Indiana or Ohio, and he had gotten several accounts. Now, the way that he hacked into it is exactly the same way that Bitfinex was compromised 10 years later. The exact same fucking attack. Now, that guy's name was Eugene Lichtenstein, Ilya's dad. Ilya's dad is the guy who hacked into a Secret Service computer way back 2005. Did they prosecute him? No, they didn't. Why didn't they prosecute him? What did they do? Well, instead of prosecuting him, they turned him into a government informant. So when you turn someone into a government informant, what that actually means is that person is protected. Not only are they protected, but it allows the law enforcement agency to start to hide and obscure some of the evidence that's floating around at that time. Now, here's why that's important. Yours truly, fucking idiot that I was back then. I break the law on that same friggin' laptop in Secret Service custody at the Secret Service field office. That's the same laptop that was used to launch and identify investigations and criminals that led to at least 9 indictments. At least 9 people were indicted and given time because of the work that I did at the Secret Service, the work that I did while I was committing crime at the Secret Service. Now, that's fine, okay? The problem is that from a judicial standpoint, if a defense lawyer finds out that the chain of evidence is potentially compromised, it's very easy to convince a jury to disregard that evidence. Eugene Lichtenstein hacks into the laptop that I'm gathering all of the evidence against these 9 individuals. If a defense attorney is told that, the defense attorney can fashion a narrative that says, hey, not only was it hacked into, but how likely is it, because this guy's able to do this, how likely is it that the attacker planted, changed, or deleted some of the evidence that was on the laptop targeting my client? At that point, it becomes very easy to convince the jury to disregard that evidence, and that person that's indicted walks the fuck away. When you turn Eugene into an informant, it allows you to hide that evidence. And in fact, Bobby Kirby gets on the stand, because what happens is my ass knew I was going to escape. John Giannone, one of the guys that I had indicted, that I targeted and set up, he was at the same county jail that I was. Now, when you're in the same county jail and you've got co-defendants, they do not put your ass together. No, because you guys will talk and you'll get your stories straight, and they don't want that because it becomes very hard to start to prosecute you at that point in time. But this jail, you could send a letter to some other inmate at the county jail. And that's what I did. I sent a letter to John before I was moved out of there saying, hey, you need to understand that that machine was hacked into. If you can show that, you can probably have that evidence thrown out and you'll be all right. So John has that information. He gives that letter to the judge saying, hey, Brett Johnson says that his machine was hacked into. Bobby Kirby gets on the fucking stand and says that it never happened, that there was no hack, that, hey, yeah, we did have an attacker, but the only thing he took over was an email address that Brett had. That's the only thing he had. It had nothing to do. The machine was not compromised. There was no keylogger on it. We were never hacked at all. He lies about it, even though we've got the goddamn documents that show the hack happened. Here's the other interesting thing. John Giannone takes his shit to trial. Yeah, he rolls the die. All right, he takes his stuff to trial. As he's taking it to trial, he files all these FOIA requests for information relating to Shadowcrew, relating to Brett Johnson, relating to him, relating to every single thing that he can find to get information on that might help his case. He ends up with physical boxes full of documents. All right, this is prior to 2011. He ends up with all these fucking documents, boxes of them. He gets out after he serves his time, he gets out of prison. He decides he wants, digital copies of them. So he submits the exact same FOIA requests. He gets 3 documents back. That's all the information we have. We don't have anything else. Now, why is that? I'll tell you why that is. Because the Secret Service is trying to hide this bullshit. Why are they trying to hide it? Well, because there's a few reasons. The first is that if they were to announce that my machine had been compromised, then those 9 people that they were trying to put behind bars, they wouldn't be behind bars, all right? Because you'd have to throw that shit out. You'd have to throw out the evidence, all right? And if you did leave the evidence in there, the jury would not believe it. So that's the number one reason. There's another reason, though. As I told you before, government agencies do not talk. to each other. They do not share and exchange information. So when the Secret Service made Eugene Lichtenstein an informant, no one told the Secret Service that, hey, Eugene, when he came over to the United States with him and his family, like in 1987, when he came over to the United States in the 80s, that reason that he gave of religious persecution, that's not really true. What's more true is that Eugene had connections with Russian intelligence. If you're the Secret Service and you admit that you made a Russian agent an informant on a cybercrime case where that same Russian agent had hacked into a United States Secret Service machine, you talk about a black fucking eye all of a sudden. And understand, that's not the only black eye they had from this stuff. Albert Gonzalez, my forum techie, he was an informant. He screws over the Secret Service. He's the guy that hit Heartland Payment Systems, Dave & Buster's and TJ Maxx. He hit Heartland Payment Systems while being an informant for the United States Secret Service. They were giving him fucking secret memos about all the stuff they were investigating that he was then using against them to screw them over. He's not the only one. I'm the guy that committed crime from inside of the Secret Service offices. So they had a whole list of fucking failures, embarrassing failures at that. And now you've got Eugene, Russian intelligence, hacked into our machines, and we decide to make him an informant. Yeah, there's a lot of good goddamn reasons that they didn't want to do this. The way that I found out about it, John had been chasing my ass around for a couple of years, and I just did not want to talk to John. Embarrassment, thought that the guy really disliked me. I didn't want to communicate with him. Finally, one day, I'm like, fuck it, man. He keeps pinging me. I'm going to answer him back. So he was good, and he actually thanked me for the indictment. He was like, if you hadn't, and I think he only served like 4 years, but he was like, if you hadn't got me arrested, I would have done at least 20 because they would have gotten me on some of that fucking Albert Gonzalez stuff. And everyone who got indicted under Albert got a shitload of time. So he thanked me for that. And he was like, he started talking about some of the FOIA documents that he had. And he's like, hell, I even know who hacked into you. And I paused because I didn't know. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, that laptop that you had that got hacked. He said, I know who did it. I've got the documents on it. I was like, can you send that to me? And he's like, yes. So he sends me the documents that I show on episode 46, the documents where they interview Eugene, the documents where they make Eugene a confidential informant. And this is the interview of Eugene Lichtenstein. Special agent and I interviewed Eugene Lichtenstein at the Chicago field office. Prior to the interview, Lichtenstein was advised that he was not under arrest and was free to leave at any time. Lichtenstein stated that he understood he was not in custody and voluntarily agreed to be interviewed. The following is a synopsis of that interview. Lichtenstein stated that he moved to the United States from Russia approximately 13 years ago. He further stated that he is fluent in the Russian language. Lichtenstein stated that he became interested in fraudulent schemes conducted over the internet in 2004, further stated that his interest was directed toward advance fee or 419 schemes, and that he would attempt to gain access to the computers of the perpetrators of these types of crimes to warn potential victims. Sounds like a good story. Lichtenstein stated that he became interested in online carding forums such as Shadowcrew and Theft Services. Shadowcrew, me, with the same intent, which was to warn potential victims of these types of crimes. Eugene further stated that he installed a keylogger on the computer used by Brett Johnson. With this keylogger, Eugene stated that he took control of Brett Johnson's email accounts. In addition, he stated that he posted personal information obtained from emails on the FedWatch Google group. So he took over email accounts, took over some payment accounts, terrorized Secret Service and myself, my fiance at the time, everything else. Made us actually posted addresses to other criminal forums that the Secret Service was worried enough that they made me change addresses at that point in time. All right, so it was a concern. Lichtenstein stated that he initially wanted to expose Gollum Fund, me, but later attempted to obtain money from several compromised accounts from a bank in Indiana with Brett Johnson's assistance. Eugene Lichtenstein stated that he was unsuccessful in obtaining fraudulent funds from these compromised accounts. And here is where we get into what I was talking about, that I believe he was a Secret Service informant. This line right here. Eugene Lichtenstein stated that he would cooperate in the furtherance of this and any other Secret Service investigation. He admitted that he was the subject who used the screen names Deuce and Menace Day when communicating online with Brett Johnson and other subjects. Therefore, Eugene Lichtenstein has been eliminated as a subject in this investigation. John didn't know what he had. So he sends me the documents, and I'm just reading the documents. It says Eugene Lichtenstein. And I'm like, Lichtenstein, man? I know that fucking name from someplace. Lichtenstein. So I just put in Eugene Lichtenstein into Google, and up pops Ilya Lichtenstein, Bitfinex. And I'm like, who the fuck is Ilya? So I looked at Ilya, and Ilya is Eugene's son. I'm like, oh, fuck. So then I start reading about the Bitfinex hack. And I'm like, that is what Eugene did in 2005. So I'm the guy that broke the story about Eugene even being a hacker. Understand that the Secret Service at that point in time, because they knew Ilya had been arrested, they had not shared with FBI arrest Ilya. The Secret Service had not told at all, anybody. They hadn't told Eugene's prosecutor. They hadn't, not Eugene, they hadn't told Ilya's prosecutor. They hadn't told Ilya's attorneys. They hadn't told anybody at the FBI that, hey, Eugene Lichtenstein back in the day was a criminal, and, he was, Russian intelligence, and, we made him an informant. They hadn't told that. They had hidden all that bullshit. I'm the guy that breaks that story. That was such a big break that fucking Forbes sends a camera crew down to film an episode. Not only that, but the Tiger King guy, the guy on fucking Netflix who made the Tiger King show, he's doing a documentary about it too. He hears about it. He's like, shit, can you come on my show? And my answer was, no, I just signed an NDA or non-compete with Forbes on this. I got to wait a year. So I think now they're going to bring me on that documentary. I don't know, because the Forbes documentary has not been picked up for distribution. So I'm the guy that cracked that. What's interesting, though, is the woman who, and I forgot her name, the woman who was filming the documentary for Forbes about Ilya Lichtenstein. I had a phone call with her, a Zoom meeting rather, and I was telling her about this and telling her what I mentioned on 46, 47, and today what I'm talking about. I was telling her about that, and her face, I was like, what? I want you to understand that I've been looking at Ilya for a long time, since his arrest. Yeah. And I've been telling everyone that there's no way he could have done this. Yeah. At the same time, I've been trying to ask about Eugene, and no one will talk to me. Everyone is scared of him. Overseas, in the Ukraine and Russia, no one will talk about him. You're the first person that said anything about him. And what you're saying is all of a sudden clicking on all fucking cylinders, because this is exactly what happened. It wasn't Ilya. Eugene, when he had broken into those bank accounts, when I was working with the Secret Service, Eugene, he had access to the accounts. Eugene did not know how to launder money. That was his big problem. He had no clue whatsoever. So he tried to enlist me, not knowing I was working the Secret Service. He tried to enlist me to help launder those funds. So we got the credentials and the evidence that we needed to indict him on that bank breach as well. Secret Service chose not to do that. They made him an informant in order to cover up every single thing that they could along the way. That kind of lays the groundwork for everything. So why am I doing this show today? The answer is Ilya Lichtenstein. Of course, he pleads guilty. Not only does he plead guilty to money laundering, but he takes responsibility for the hack or the attack against Bitfinex. Now, he doesn't know how that happened. The question is, and is that the way you did it? That you just gained access to the private keys for all of those addresses? Is that correct? So to control a wallet, you've got a public address, and then you've got a private key address. In order to take that Bitcoin out of that fucking wallet, You've got to have that private key. If you don't have that private key, that Bitcoin ain't yours. Your keys, your wallet, your Bitcoin. You don't have the keys, you ain't got shit. Prosecutor says on that 120,000 Bitcoin, is that what you did? You gained access to the private keys for all of those addresses. Is that correct? And the answer is, I gained access to the API keys that let me control the withdrawal process and initiate withdrawals. He never really had the actual private keys. He had the API keys. Now, what's interesting is he says that, but he doesn't really know what the fuck that means. He doesn't. This is the prosecutor that's asking him these fucking questions. When you say, when they have a witness, and this is what a lot of people don't appreciate. If I'm a prosecutor or a defense attorney and I'm putting a witness on the stand, what I'm going to do, I am not going to ask a question unless I know the answer to that question. They teach you this shit in law school. Never ask a question that you don't know the fucking answer to. So you sit down and you ask them these questions. Bam, 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 bam. That way I know exactly what you're going to say. If you say something that's a little questionable, I'm like, can you phrase it a little bit differently? And if you're a really fucked up lawyer, you say, hey, can you say this? And that's what happens. You coach the witness. The prosecution does it. The defense attorneys do it. Everybody fucking does it. This answer here is a coached answer because Ilya doesn't know what the fuck's going on. He doesn't. He's read about this shit through his own discovery of how the attack happened. That's what's happened. So when he says that, he doesn't know what the fuck that means, and he just leaves it there. The prosecutor at the same time, he knows that Ilya doesn't know what Ilya's talking about, so he's going to leave it there as well. Okay? We're just going to leave it at that. And he says, eventually you got about 2,000 addresses. Ilya says yes, and it goes blah, 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 blah. So, why am I doing this show? The answer is, John, he messages me on Telegram the other day, and he's like, hey, man, you got any news on Ilya? And I was like, no. You got any news on Ilya? And he's like, yes, I do have some news on Ilya. So here's the thing. I can't be fucking bought. I can't. I've stolen all the fucking money in the world. I know what it's like to have money. I found out, I'm 54 now, and I find out, I don't need all the fucking money in the world. I need to be able to pay my bills, do something nice every now and then, buy my fucking toys that I like, and I'm happy. Okay, I'm happy. I don't need all this money. The thing is that Bitfinex, they offered a reward to anybody who gave information as to who committed the actual attack. So Chainalysis has been paid part of that reward. If John and I had been recognized, if they would have just fucking admit that Eugene is the guy, John and I would probably get about $40, $50 million a piece. That shit ain't never going to fucking happen. You can bet your chili white ass on that. So John tells me, I've got some information. I was like, what's the information? Ilya and his dad are going into witness protection. Huh? Ilya and his dad are going into witness protection. You have got to be fucking kidding me. So I asked, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, dude, they're both going into witness protection. I was like, how? Why? Well, Ilya's testifying against Roman Sterlingov, who has some connections himself. At the same time, Eugene has some connections. So they're going into witness protection. As a matter of fact, Eugene has already disappeared. Ilya's still in custody. Eugene is not to be found anywhere. His home address no longer has anyone at it. So that got my attention. And I wanted to talk about that because that thing I said at the beginning of the show, doing the right thing. A lot of people out there, and understand, I'm the guy, most of my life, I have done the wrong thing. Most of my life, I have been motivated by cash. I've been motivated by love, but that love has led to me wanting to get cash in order to give the people that I love, the strippers and whatnot. it's really interesting. And I have an attorney friend. She's over in the Middle East these days. And she is a forensic, forensic attorney, does a lot of cybercrime cases, stuff like that. And she told me that law enforcement, they really like to get people who are ideologically motivated. Now, understand that when I was a criminal, I was not ideologically motivated. I was cash motivated. These days, I am ideologically motivated. I am not the guy who can be purchased. I'm not the guy that can be bought off. You're not going to persuade me to leave your name out of something if you've been fucking up. Whether you're a company, whether you're a criminal, whether you're a church like I've been doing the past couple of weeks, I don't give a damn. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to do the right goddamn thing. This friend of mine told me that law enforcement loves that because they can kind of just set your ass loose and you'll do all the dirty work for them. But the thing is that someone like me these days who is motivated just with the idea of doing the right thing regardless, someone like me, I don't have barriers. I don't have those borders in place. I don't recognize those borders. So, while I have a deep found respect for the FBI, that doesn't mean I won't call your fucking ass out if you're doing something. While I have a deep respect for law enforcement, that doesn't mean that I recognize the DOJ as being pristine, white, and virgin all of a sudden. All right? The truth of the matter is that if you look at the way that Ilya's talking in this testimony, if you look at the way the case has been done, if you look at all the information that's been out there that was hidden before I started to break that information, if you look at that, there is no way that you don't crawl up Eugene's ass and have that investigation. And they chose not to. Instead, they chose to accept Ilya's word. Now, there's a reason for that. Agencies don't share information because they don't want their stuff screwed up, but also because of budgetary concerns, okay? You take a prosecution's office. There's a reason that federal prisons have the majority of their inmates are African American. There's a reason that 33% of black males have a felony record. It's not because they're worse than white people. It's not. You hear this systemic racism all the time. That's not untrue. The thing is that the system is in such a way that law enforcement, they make sure that crime takes place in those ethnic areas, those black neighborhoods. Those black neighborhoods tend to be very poor, so the arrests come from there. At the same time, prosecutors, they understand that because those areas are very poor, that their representation in court is going to be public pretenders. It's going to be those public defenders that, they may have 30 cases a fucking month. They've got enough time to say, hello, you need to plead guilty. All right, so you don't have the representation, so the conviction rates are much higher. Prosecutors love that shit. Not only that, but prosecutors do not want to muddy the waters of any type of investigation. So they've got Ilya, okay? When Shadowcrew was busted, I had stepped down from leadership of Shadowcrew. I didn't build the platform. A guy named Seth Sanders built the platform, but by God, I built that fucking platform. Before I came on and started run things there, they had like 60 members total because it was not a cybercrime site. It was simply a fake identity site. I came in, took it over, made all these other sub forums, put people in charge, came up with a review system. I built Shadowcrew. I built basically financial cybercrime as we know it today. When Shadowcrew was busted, again, I had stepped down from that point. They had no evidence of me. They knew my name, but they had no real evidence connecting me to any crimes at that point. All right, they weren't able to gather that. The people who they indicted, that they arrested so Shadowcrew was shut down October 26, 2004, 33 people arrested across 6 different countries. Those 33 people were labeled as the people who started Shadowcrew, who ran Shadowcrew, who built Shadowcrew. They didn't have a fucking thing to do with that. They were simply the people that were left over when I stepped down and when Albert Gonzalez, my forum techie, when he got through banning people. All right, he banned a lot of the administrators and the moderators that I had. He put more people in charge. Those people who were in charge when Shadowcrew was busted were given credit as being the geniuses behind Shadowcrew. Not true. But they let it run with that. And the reason they let it run with that, they did not want to muddy the waters of that prosecution. If they were to come up and say, yeah, we arrested these people, but these people, they didn't start Shadowcrew. Well, no, we didn't arrest anyone who started Shadowcrew, who built Shadow. We didn't do that. We just arrested the people who were there, but we're going to give them credit for starting it. That tends to be the way that prosecution runs. So with Ilya, you've got the information about Eugene. How do I know? Because by God, I emailed them the fucking documents that said it. I emailed the prosecutor, the judge, and the defense attorneys. You've got these things. This is fucking Eugene. Why aren't you guys talking about this shit in trial? They chose not to do that. In fact, what they do, notice I said do, what they do is before Ilya pleads guilty, they label that case a matter of national security. Why in the fuck do they do that? Well, because Eugene's fucking connected. Not only is Eugene fucking connected, but Ilya, part of the evidence that they got out of his apartment were diagrams of post offices and camera locations in the Ukraine, which screams some sort of FSB involvement. So they chose to label it a matter of national security. They bring in a CISO who can determine what can be discussed and what cannot be discussed publicly in court. So that's what they do. Then Ilya comes in and he pleads guilty. Eugene's never brought up, but he is going to be in witness protection. So needless to say, I get a little pissed. I don't know if I'm pissed right now or if I'm disheartened. Merrick Garland was testifying before Congress few weeks ago. And he made the statement that the DOJ does not target individuals, that justice is blind, that justice will be served regardless of who the person is. I don't see that. And I mentioned before on a previous show, I mentioned Randy Weaver, who the ATF absolutely targeted, who the DOJ knew the ATF targeted, and they went with it anyway. You see all these cases, Waco, I grant you that David Koresh was a fucking idiot and a cult leader, but did he really commit any crimes? Or did they just target the son of a bitch and then burn everyone alive at the compound? Randy Weaver, they targeted, they snipers took out some of his family. They entrapped him on a weapon. Ilya Lichtenstein, in order not to muddy the waters of an investigation, they label it a matter of national security, and they throw everybody in witness protection at the end of the day. And you're going to tell me, you're going to have the gall, the unmitigated gall, to get up there and say that justice is blind, that the DOJ doesn't target people, that there's not at least two tiers of justice in the United States. I guess the problem is that you can't buy me. John Giannone, the man really wants that pardon. He really wants to get away from that history. And I can't blame the guy. I can't. I mean, I'm the guy that embraces mine. But I understand people who would like to have their criminal records erased. I'm not that guy. I'm not. I'm going to, embrace it, live with it, and by God, I'm going to make the best of it. John wants to get rid of that criminal past of his. So, John, once this information comes out, John contacts his attorney. His attorney types up a motion for discovery because, the Secret Service officer, in this case, Bobby Kirby, the Secret Service officer lied to the court about that system being breached because if, they would have made that part of discovery, John probably wouldn't have been convicted. Not only wouldn't have John been convicted, but the other at least 8 individuals would not have been convicted either. So John contacts his attorney. His attorney types up a motion. His attorney sends it over to the DOJ. This is the motion that we're getting ready to submit to court. You guys want to say anything? The DOJ responds, hey, if you don't file that motion, we will back a pardon for John Giannone. If you don't file the motion that would get this whole ball rolling, that would expose Eugene, that would expose the United States Secret Service as being improper in their investigations, that would show that Ilya Lichtenstein, not the guy who did the Bitfinex hack. If you file that motion that would do that, if you don't file the motion that would do that, we will make sure that John Giannone gets exactly what he's been wanting all of these years. What do you want to do? So John tells me that. My response to John was, dude, you've been wanting that for a long time. And I can't blame you at all. I can't blame you at all if you want to do that. Okay? Because I already know nothing's going to happen. It's more important for them to keep this shit hidden than it is for them to get the truth out. So I told John, hey man, that's what you've been wanting. I understand. And John, and again, this guy's been wanting this stuff for years. John responds, I'm not going to do that. So he's, I guess John is slowly becoming the guy who is ideologically motivated to do the right goddamn thing too. My thing is that, again, I don't want your fucking pardon. I don't. I did it. I'm guilty. Not only am I guilty of that, I'm guilty of a hell of a lot fucking more, and probably should have got a hell of a lot more fucking time than I did. All right, I don't want your pardon. But I will say that if you're going to offer to pardon him, which by God you should, then maybe you ought to pardon the other 8 people too. Daniel Rigmaiden. Yeah, that guy. I don't even know who the other 7 are right now. But everyone should be pardoned on that. But the problem is that doing that is going to raise some questions. And regardless of whether you do that, if you pardon them, that information about Eugene sooner or later is going to come out because people are going to be screaming, why are these fucking guys getting pardoned? If you don't pardon them and John submits the motion for discovery on that, then the information comes out anyway. So I don't know how the DOJ is going to handle that, but I'm sure that by God, they'll find a way. I guess what I'm doing this with this show, guys, is hoping it's that thing in prison. In prison, you learn that it's not the individual that matters, that the individual by themselves cannot successfully navigate that environment, that life. You have to rely on your fellow human being that's in that exact same environment with you. You cannot count on the government to help you because at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about you. The big thing that I would like to see from this, because the fucking money, that ain't going to happen. The DOJ coming out and saying, oh, we were wrong about Ilya. It was actually Eugene. That ain't going to fucking happen either. But I'm hoping that what happens is that we can get some people who watch this and they start to understand that, hey, it's not about government helping us. It's about us helping each other. And I think that's why I insisted on this show not only being on Criminal Thoughts, but on being the Brett Johnson show as well. Because that's what I'm interested in these days is that understanding, that realization that it's not the individual anymore. If you look at Ilya, if you look at Sam Bankman-Fried, if you look at Heather Brooke, I think was her fucking name that was indicted, those Forbes 30 under 30 people, why the fuck are all these people who had good friggin' careers in front of them, who had promising lives in front of them, why are they choosing to commit crime. At the same time, why is it that you see that fraud these days or cybercrime these days is being accepted as a viable way to make money? That people are saying, fraud's all right, that it's not really that bad anymore. Why is that? And I really believe it boils down to, we've been raising children to understand that, hey, everyone's a winner. Everyone gets at least a participation trophy. We've been raising kids like that. We've been telling society for years now that it's the individual that matters. Look out for yourself. At the same time, we see people in government. I don't give a shit if it's Donald Trump. I don't give a shit if it's Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. But we see people in government that get away with doing the wrong thing. And they're okay. They become rich billionaires. Nancy fucking Pelosi with her insider trading. We see that. We see corporations that screw over people every single goddamn day. And what happens? That shit bleeds down. You want to know where trickle-down theory works? It works right the fuck there. It sends a message to everyone on the street saying, hey, if they can do it, why can't I do it? And all of a sudden, you get fraud being okay. All of a sudden, because of the way these kids have been raised, because they've been told, hey, you're never a winner. You're never going to go through adversity. We don't want to show kids any type of, what it feels like to lose. You get the Forbes 30 under 30. They get their asses indicted because they don't want to lose. They don't want to work hard for anything. Why? So why am I doing this show? I'm doing it. I really, it would be nice. It would be nice if the DOJ did the right thing, if the FBI did the right thing. They're not. So I'm doing this show in the hopes that maybe somebody out there sees it, listens to it, and they start to understand that it's not the individual. It's not the government that's going to help you. There is this idea of political sides, that the Republicans are better than the Democrats or vice versa. That's a fucking lie. It's a lie that's told to make sure that you believe it so that you align with somebody and you don't look out for your fellow fucking human being. We can start to realize that. Maybe we can be a better society. My name is Brett Johnson. I've said what I needed to say. You guys out there, thank you for listening. Now, I would urge you to not pay attention to the chatter from mass media or from people who are seeking positions in power. I would urge you not to do that. I would urge you to take the time to look at your fellow human being and have a conversation with them and figure out how you can help somebody be a better person at the end of the day. Because if you can do that, you will be a better person at the end of the day. So we're going to close it out. I'm going to go and I'm going to finish my monster. I'm going to probably play a fucking video game because I'm not a happy camper today talking about this. I'm disillusioned. I'm the guy that bought into the idea that, institutions will do the right goddamn thing, even though I knew they wouldn't. That doesn't mean I'm going to turn and flip and go work for the other team again. I'm not. But I am going to be that guy that goes solo enough to call them out and live with whatever consequences are there. So you guys out there, stay safe, stay secure, stay vigilant, and please take to heart that idea of, at the end of the day, just doing the right damn thing. Because that is really the only thing that matters anymore. My name is Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.